Okay.
Okay, so we are now recording. All right, and I'll kind of set this like this so that you can see both of us. We'll talk really loud. Go close this door.
Okay, I can't hear anyone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay, it is 11:12 a.m. We'll call the meeting to order, and I guess we'll need a roll call, Michael.
All right, so roll call. Eric from West Test.
I am present.
And Mark Ellery.
Present.
And Leah Siggety.
Present.
And let me turn this on. All right, maybe you guys can hear us a little bit better now. Okay, Lynn Hamilton. Not present. Okay. And who else we got?
Mike.
Yeah. Oh, Mike from, Mike. All right, so for present, I've got Mark Ellery, Eric, and Leah Siggety. Mr. Vice Chair, I do believe that makes us a quorum.
Okay, if you can verify that we have a quorum, we can move on.
Okay, so leave. A majority of the registered folks.
3 out of 5.
We're there.
Okay. All right.
I knew what it meant. I was just hoping for you got this many, you got this many, you're good, but we're going to say we're good.
Okay, I was able to print an agenda here. So first item on the agenda is the approval of our last meeting's minutes. If somebody would like to move to accept those minutes as recorded previously, please do so.
I'll move to accept.
And I will second that. All those in favor, present and in favor of adopting those minutes from our last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposed, minutes from December 5th meeting are accepted, and we will move on to our next item on the agenda, cannabis inspections. Mike.
Okay, cannabis inspections is the next item on the agenda. And Lee, I believe this was something that you suggested for the agenda.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and carry it?
Yeah, I can explain a bit more. Just being a council member now for almost a full year, I want to make sure that I am best serving the council as well. So really wanted to bring an understanding of feedback from inspectors, if there is anything that us as an industry can be better prepared with, and information from an inspector's point of view on how we as an industry can be better partners due to my partnership here in the council.
Right. Oh, that's understood. So I have not received any complaints from our inspectors that have been trying to do cannabis inspections. Typically when they go to a location, the location is welcoming, as much as can be welcoming with a regulating party. But everything that is within the control of the location seems to go really smooth. There are still some challenges in the packaging, in that the way the packaging test is typically conducted, we're looking for tear, which is the product you can't use. Typically the container, you're looking for samples of the tear to match in weight. And part of what we're running into is there's a lot of glass used in the packaging, a lot of other materials that we're not used to seeing used widespread in packaging anymore. And the tears vary. So it's really hard to, what winds up happening is we have to destroy a whole bunch of packages to do the package test.
Totally.
And that's something that we're trying not to do.
Right.
Especially with this product because it's such an expensive product. So we're still working through those challenges. I think the biggest thing for industry to just be aware of is if they're going to go into deli style sales for any reason, which I know a lot of locations are getting out of deli style sales, just make sure they license their scales with us. And make sure that they're choosing a suitable scale. And that's information that, I believe there's a little bit of that information on our website, particularly you're looking for a class 2 scale, with a very small division size. And right off the top of my head, I don't remember what the division size is that's recommended.
Okay.
But I can certainly look into that and get back to you.
For cannabis, is Vince still the best contact that handles all of that?
Yep, I was just going to say that Vince Wolpert is still our compliance manager over the over the cannabis program. So if you have any specific questions, he would certainly be the one to direct those to.
Okay. Sounds like a better, just general understanding of tear weights, what you guys are looking for when
Right.
it comes to tear weights
Okay.
and empty packaging
Right.
and things like that.
Sure.
Having those on hand of their standard empty packages would be helpful in a way.
Could be
to
helpful
you.
in a way, yeah. And it's typically, I'm thinking it's been a few days since I did a packaging inspection, but I think as long as you have 5 of the empty containers, then
Get in.
we can get a good tear.
Understand. Okay.
You know, so and the challenge is if you're using a bunch of different styles of packaging, that is a lot of stuff for you to hang on to.
Yeah.
So
So there's has to be, especially for a third party product, has to be the opening of the packaging that
Yes.
happens on site.
yes, correct. The example I'll use is like Cheerios, because it's the same basic inspection. It's just with the cannabis, it's much smaller quantities.
Right.
But like with a cereal inspection, let's say, we would go in and we would determine our lot. So I look at the shelf. There's 30 boxes of Cheerios here. I need 12 of them. So then I would randomly pick 12. The first 2 that I pick, I would gross weigh. So weigh the entire box, everything that's in it. Then those first 2 I empty out, dump out the Cheerios, wipe out the crumbs, stuff the bag back in the box. Do it with the second one. Weigh those empty boxes.
See where the variation
See,
is.
and hopefully they don't vary.
Hopefully, yeah. If there is, then would you go and get additional selections?
Yes, there's a procedure that we use. It's called tear ratio. Basically, you plug some numbers in and it tells you, okay, open X number more packages to determine your tear.
Okay, so just them understanding that and being prepared for that
Yes,
and ready with that so that you guys can quickly do your tests.
correct.
and get-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, even, talking breakfast cereal again, there was one location that I had to open all 12 boxes because I couldn't get the tear to line up in the cardboard boxes in the bags.
Yeah.
So it's when you're doing package testing, you're pretty much assuming that you're going to open 12 packages, but you're trying to take steps to not have to open 12 packages. And they're very well defined steps, but if any part of that little process doesn't work, now you're open all packages.
Yeah.
So then you weigh them all, you record the weight, you open them and empty them all, then you weigh them again, and that tells you what the tear weight was for each package. Then you do the math and it tells you, okay, you got this many plus, this many minus, this many outside of what's allowed.
And if you're outside of your certain allowed amount, you gotta go and take that or mark it as unsellable in that point.
Basically, yes. So
Or re-sticker it or whatever that might be.
right. So there's a lower limit called the maximum allowable variation, and it's based on the stated quantity of the package. Typically with marijuana, you're always down at the very low end and I'm trying to remember the table, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's,
I know which one you're talking about.
yeah, it's in handbook 133. And it specifies, instead of being just what you typically see for packages, the higher the gross weight, you get a little bit more of a wiggle room. So the way the table is typically laid out is between this and this for labeled quantity, this is your MAB. Between this and this, this is your MAB. When you get down to the level of pack that you see in cannabis, it's such small quantities that now it's just a percentage of the stated quantity.
Whatever percent. Okay,
And like I said, right off the top of my head, I don't remember the percentage, but
this is good info though. Wanting to better my industry for preparation as they have the inspections happen. The only feedback that I have gotten from any friends in the industry is the length of the inspection itself.
yes. And the trick is the inspections may take a while because the inspectors are making double, triple sure that the numbers are all right, the procedure was done correctly. With cannabis being a somewhat unfamiliar item to test, it takes us a little bit longer because we're double checking the I's and the T's. So hopefully as we move into this becoming more of a routine thing, the time spent will go down a little bit, but any steps that they can take at the location, again, having some of that empty tear.
What about tear weights listed on the packaging as well? Is that helpful to you guys, or you're having to weigh regardless?
It can be helpful. What that can do is help with what we call an audit. So there's really two stages to a package test. Typically, there's the audit stage, which is where I take the package and set it on the scale and, well, gross, it weighs this. Net, it says it contains this. What's the difference? Yeah, I can see that being the box or the bag or the whichever.
Got a couple of questions, if I could, at some point.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Leah, maybe you could educate me. I've never stepped foot in the dispensary, but in hearing all this, I understand that cookies are sold, gummies, a variety of edibles, I guess, that have THC in it. I'm just curious, the labeled amount of THC in a cookie. Are is it, and Michael, are you interested in the weight of the THC in a cookie or the weight of the cookie? Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
And we have both listed to answer your question, Mark. We have to test it. So through our regulatory body, AZDHS, Department of Health Services, we have to test each of those products. And on that label does have to have the milligram amount of the exact THC percentage inside that product. So it has it's within milligram amount to the THC in comparison to the entire product itself.
Okay. So Michael, do you defer to the other agency? You're not going to tear a cookie apart to try and get the weight of the THC.
No, it's basically, at that point, it's like if we were doing a net contents inspection on a bottle of Advil that's going by count, we wouldn't be testing the Advil to see if each tablet contained 200 milligrams of ibuprofen. We would just be counting, are there 50 of them in here?
Right.
For most weights and measures jurisdictions across the country, especially getting into the cannabis universe, because it is so new, quality has been a huge sticking point in the discussions, because a lot of weights and measures folks are like, that's not us. We're there for how much did you get of the product. In this case, that's the cookie.
Right.
The net weight of the cookie is good. Then most weights and measures jurisdictions are probably going to say, okay, well, then that's what we're checking for the quantity.
Okay. All right.
But
Well, this is all good.
Definitely a question.
Yeah. And that's I think that these are awesome questions, Mark, because I think that really is regulated by that other body. They require an ingredients list from us, that those COAs, that testing to be included in the product, as well as being visible to the consumer through a QR code. There are those regulations and they check on. We have a cannabis dispensary is going to have multiple inspectors from the state of Arizona, both a weights and measures inspector that comes in, as well as an AZDHS inspector that are checking those other pieces of that
Okay.
that item. That's great. Yeah.
And
Well,
then just one other quick question, and I'll get off my tangent here, but
That's why I
again,
brought
I've
the
never,
topic, man. That's what I like
I
to
don't know
talk
anything about it, so it's fascinating to me. I'm just curious, all the gummies, the cookies, and all those alternatives. I just remember from the old high school days a baggie and with just pot in it. Is there when you mention tear, can an individual just go in and you put the cannabis on a scale and weigh it and put it in a Ziploc, or
Yes.
and is that the majority of the business, or is it all the
Is
gummies
not
and
the
the cookies?
majority of the business. He mentioned deli style, which is exactly what you're talking about, to where you can walk into a dispensary, request an amount of what we would call flour in that category, actual cannabis flour.
Okay.
They'll measure it on a scale that is regulated by, the scale itself is regulated by them, but the cannabis is regulated by ACDHS.
Mhm.
They would weigh out that certain amount and sell them in a certain amount. That is very rare. There are less deli style nowadays than ever before. Most are doing a pre-packaged amount that is done so by a third party or a different dispenser that also is regulated by the weights and measures division for the scale, and then AZDHS for
Well,
the cannabis card.
But here's where it gets tricky. So the way our rule and statute is written, if it's a scale used for in-house packaging, it's not subject to our requirements. So all those places that,
So we get ours tested, but that's our choice to do that?
that's
is
your
what you're
choice to
saying?
do that.
Okay,
Yep, yep. The number of scales that we've had licensed at dispensaries dropped by more than 70%.
It's only required if it's deli style.
If it's deli style, because that's where, and I'll go to the example of a grocery store, just because most people understand that better, but it's the same thing going on with you guys. So let's take your favorite neighborhood grocery store. If you walk up to the counter and say, hey, I want 2 pounds of ground beef, and they weigh it out in front of you, they put the little wax paper down on the scale, they weigh the ground beef. Okay, that wax paper is tear. It's not supposed to count towards the weight. They print their little sticker, they put it in a bag, wrap it in paper, do whatever, put the sticker on it, it's got the weight. Deli style. If you walk up to the meat case where they've got all the prepackaged ground beef, that's in-house packed. So technically, by rule and statute, the scale that they're using in the back to weigh that is not regulated by weights and
Even
measures,
at the grocery store.
even at the grocery store.
Got it.
We are one of the few states that has it that way. Most other states, their definition of a commercial device is written differently to include those. Ours very much excludes those. So it's an interesting, as you get into different jurisdictions, the way it's handled is different. So down to the cannabis, it's kind of the same idea. If you're weighing it in the back and putting it into packages, that scale you're using for that, for weights and measures, does not have to be regulated. But if somebody walks up to the counter and says, give me the flour, and that weighment is occurring right here, right now to fill an order, then it's a commercial device. Just to keep it interesting.
Totally.
So.
Calibration's a choice then, which
Yes,
is nice, yeah.
Right, and even when we get down to scales in general, since you mentioned calibration, we have no calibration frequency requirement.
Right.
As long as the thing is accurate when tested, we're good to go. It's the same with gas pumps. There is no frequency requirement. Well, you have to get your pumps calibrated every 2 years or whatever. No, when I was an inspector, I ran across a lot of pumps that hadn't been calibrated since the first Bush was in office, but they were still accurate.
Right.
You know,
No
so
worries.
at the end of the day, test as found. If it's accurate, it's accurate, and if it's not, it's not. And then of course, accuracy runs 2 directions. It's either accurate in favor or inaccurate in favor of the owner operator, or inaccurate in favor of the consumer. We're going to take action on the ones that are in favor of the owner operator. So, because that's the detriment to the consumer at that point. So,
Thanks for the information, guys. It's all new to me and very interesting. So thank you.
yeah,
No,
no problem.
thank you for
No
the
problem.
questions. I didn't, topic wise, I hadn't brought much to the table as far as that goes. I really wanted to open the discussion, utilize myself as a resource. That's why I joined the council in general, to answer the questions for anyone that hasn't been in there, and to better prepare, making it so that's a great partnership for the inspectors that walk in the door.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And our goal, as we conduct inspections just across the board, our goal is always to be as least disruptive as possible. Now, that doesn't mean occasionally we're not disruptive, because as possible, there are cases where, yes, we're going to have to disrupt what's going on to do our inspections. We try to keep it to a minimum. Typically, the hard thing with packaging, if I go into, your favorite big blue neighborhood superstore to do packaging tests there, nobody's standing there watching me. So if it takes me 2 or 3 hours, doesn't really matter. I'm just set up in the corner down by the canned soup or whatever, and just doing my thing.
It makes sense. To answer kind of Mark, what he's explaining, in order to be in property and touching the product, you have to be escorted by somebody that is FA carded. So if an inspector comes into our facilities, we have to dedicate an employee to walk alongside of that inspector for the entire time they are there. So, which probably is the largest complaint. It's not even taking the packaging off the floor.
Right.
It's taking the employee off the floor, I guess, probably.
Right. And, it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, we would love to be able to call ahead and say, hey,
Right.
XYZ dispensary, we're
Doesn't
going to be there on
quite work like
Tuesday.
that.
Have somebody there to help us. But then that decimates the
Totally
entire
defeats
rest
the
of our
purpose.
weights and measures inspection.
This is all good
So-
info. I think that we, like I said, as an industry, just knowing can be better for better.
Yeah.
Just knowing.
And always reach out if you have questions. I know that that's something that we've been working on internally. Vince has had a lot of other plates spinning, but I know he's always thinking about it. There's been some, I don't really want to say delay, but there's just been some kind of holding back on our end while stuff at the national level gets
Of
sorted out.
course.
Because what had happened with cannabis, and I'll just take 2 minutes to tell the tale. When it first started, weights and measures wasn't really even involved with it across the country, and there were very few states that it was even legal. In Arizona, when it was medicinal, for some reason, we were licensing all the scales. And I think that was a decision made long ago that somebody didn't, read the end of the commercial device definition. And DHS, bless their hearts, they were just trying to make sure that you guys were compliant with us. And it's like, whoa, why is everybody licensing these scales?
Yeah.
So then, typically in weights and measures, we look to what the other jurisdictions are doing, because we're shooting for uniformity. There's actually handbooks that we follow that are adopted by pretty much every state. And I won't go into the details right now of how that gets set up. Maybe we'll make that a conversation for another
I think we
agenda.
got a bit of a training on that, where you guys have the national committee.
The national
do the voting.
conference and the Western.
Yep,
and
and
yeah.
then, and we learned about the different handbooks and which ones are utilized and adopted, and so
Right.
so this is not the first time I've heard about the 133
Not the
handbook.
133 handbook.
Yeah.
So 44 is commercial devices, 130 is method of sale and uniform laws, 133 is package checks. And those are adopted and updated at the national level. Well, the keepers of the handbook, there's the national conference that decides what's going in the handbook, but the National Institute of Standards and Technology publishes the handbook. So basically, we tell them this is what's going in it, they publish it. Well, NIST is a federal body. Cannabis is a federal no-no. So it took a long time to even get where at one of these meetings we could discuss cannabis without I always call the folks from NIST, they're the smart friends. They're the ones that know all the, well, this is what you got to have for a technical requirement. We're all just going, make it do this, so they keep us in line. Well, with cannabis, they couldn't, because they're like, oh, it's a Schedule 5 drug. It's illegal, or whichever class it is, Schedule 5, I think. We can't even talk about it because we're federal employees. Ooh, so adult guidance out the window. So a lot of states had to figure it out for themselves, and that's what they did, to work with the rules and statutes that they had in place for cannabis. And when there was 26 states doing cannabis, which I don't even know how many it is now, it's a majority. But I'll pick on 26. When there was 26 states doing cannabis, there was 26 ways of regulating cannabis, weights and measures for cannabis. It was just all across the board. So now they're trying to bring it into the handbook where it's all consistent and uniform across the country. There's been a lot of discussion because the other fun part with the cannabis is it is unlike any other product that we can regulate in the grand scheme of things. Flour, like bread flour, a little finicky, but it's $2 a pound. You know, cannabis, it's finicky, but it's also way more expensive, and it goes in much smaller quantities. So everybody's trying to wrap their heads around it, get a really good idea. Stuff has come a long way in the last 3 years at the conference. But like one of the items on the agenda at the conference this year that goes to vote in July is how much of a moisture allowance do we give cannabis?
Yeah.
Because until that gets decided, it's even kind of like, why even test it if there's no uniform moisture allowance we can give it? It's going to be growing for years, you know, and I just harken it back to the good old days when the first gas pump landed on a corner somewhere and weights and measures going,
What's that?
what are you?
Yeah.
You know, it's been 100 and something
That's
years,
interesting.
but it was the same conversation then,
Yeah,
you know, so we'll get there.
yeah,
Um,
I'm so excited to be on the forefront of this stuff. And
Yeah.
be the insight to the industry for it, for our state and any others. The
Right.
national conference is very interesting to me.
National conference is an interesting process. And one thing that I'll say, you know, before I leave it up to you for whatever else you've got, is the cannabis industry is one of the most excited industries to be regulated that I have ever seen.
We're already so used to it.
Right. And it's,
So it's something, we want to be like the rest of them.
yes.
We want,
Yes.
you mentioned grocery stores and
Uh-huh.
things coming from our, I guess it's my own personal opinion, so a personal opinion on this, but for my business and us, I want the regulation so that we could be looked at just like another widget
Exactly.
provider.
Exactly.
I wish I could feel the same way.
What's that, Mark?
As a fuel guy, I wish I could feel the same way.
Right. Yeah. Fuel is,
You know, in 100 years after we've done this, I'm sure, Mark, I'll be in the situation where I'm like, what was I thinking?
Yeah,
Playing this
exactly.
recorded video like this lady, you know, but at this point, we don't want to be, it very much is shunned because we are not.
right.
So we're looked at as this redheaded stepchild of cannabis when we are tested higher than the tomatoes that you eat that are sitting on your grocery store
Right.
by Arizona Department of Health Services and all of these others.
Yep.
We are more regulated, and so those fears aren't amongst us. We just want to be in the cool club,
Right.
the national cool club.
And weights and measures, fuel quality issues aside, Mark, because weights and measures typically is gallon as a gallon, pound as a pound. The fuel quality stuff, well, that went on us because we're already looking at the gasoline. It's basically what it boiled down to. And there's a lot of weights and measures jurisdictions across the country that fuel quality just kind of landed in their laps.
Wow.
We're one of them.
You're out there with the inspectors anyways, just take this testing machine instead. Is it pretty much like that?
Well,
Basically, I'm pulling samples and,
Yep.
and,
it
and
really got to the,
testing stuff and all that. It's always
really-
like with weights and measures, just like, you guys are gonna be at the gas stations checking
There
volume
you go.
anyway. Go ahead and take
No
care
one
of all
else
this.
drives out there.
well, what really pulled you in was the emissions and air quality.
Yeah.
That really got you sucked in because you were at the pump anyway. So why don't we have you regulate the fuel quality of these reformulated blends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are days that I wish we were just doing a gallon as a gallon and a pound as a pound, but that's not the reality,
Yeah.
you know? And fuel quality is another huge part of our program.
You guys in an effort to keep this moving, I know we started late. Leah,
Yes.
did you have more to add?
I don't, and I do appreciate all the insight from everyone and the questions, Mark, and just bringing the topic up in general, so I can be a better
Yeah.
council member. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
I learned a lot. I'm happy. Thank you. Okay. So if Leah, you don't have any other thing to share on that, why don't we keep going here on the agenda? It looks like joint initiatives for business and new weights and measures regulation. Michael, are you going to say something about this?
That was a suggestion from somebody. And I'm trying to remember who suggested that. But basically the idea behind it was, is there anything that advisory council, the companies that advisory council represents, the group as a consensus could work on to kind of come up with the what you need to know about weights and measures inspections to help these locations that are just coming into regulation, not necessarily cannabis, but ma and pa just bought their new gas station. Congratulations, they're a ma and pa gas station. Oh, look, weights and measures is going to cover all this stuff. Kind of like how to make it easier for folks coming into regulation to understand what's being regulated. And how and why. And I believe this was a suggestion made by, and I can't remember. I need to go back and research the emails. I want to say it was you, Mark, but you're not shaking your head yes. So might have been somebody else.
No, it wasn't me. But I do have a comment on it.
Kind of an education piece, kind of so you're regulated by weights and measures. Here's what you need to know to be compliant, to help, instead of it having to come from an inspection, which of course the inspections are still important because people forget or decide not to do certain things. But just when they're running out the gate and they're getting started, okay, here's what you need to know.
Yeah. A frequently asked questions on the website that they could ask by industry.
Something
perhaps.
like that. Yeah.
A drop down by industry that could say, these are some of the things that are, that'd be a great suggestion.
Just for something to aim for getting compliance up a little bit higher out the gate.
Yeah. Before that first inspector
shows up. Because the idea is, what are we shooting for? Compliance. Compliance makes the level playing field. We're not necessarily getting to every location every year, and by statute, we're not required to.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of self-maintenance, so to speak, and knowing what that is. What's the low-hanging stuff that you can always take care of, so that, well, what's the high-hanging stuff too, but realistically, here's what you need to know to maintain your compliance, and just have it be maybe worked through the different representatives of industry that are on the council or such. I believe was the direction that was intended to go. So
just a quick comment. Why not have workshops? The division you've got the mailing list for everybody in the state. And if you're interested in retail service stations or dispensaries, you could periodically have an open house / workshop specific to newcomers. Just a thought.
I like that suggestion.
No, and
if Vince was to hold a workshop, I can guarantee that we could get that blasted to some of the dispensary associations out there and have them come and have an open house session where they could ask him questions.
Yeah. And I'm certainly not against workshops at all. I think we would just have to have some feedback from industry. What workshops do you guys want? What are you looking for? We'll be more than happy to put stuff together as long as we know somebody's looking for it.
Right.
We're not going to put together this whiz bang workshop for all the folks with their linear measuring devices and 2 people show up. It's okay. Let's make sure that there's good interest. We'd have to know ahead of time, because this conference room, while it's not the biggest, we've got other spaces we can use. We just have to know ahead of time. There's a lot that goes into it, but certainly I think if industry came to us and said, hey, we're interested in learning about XYZ, we would be more than happy to put on something just to, again, help with that compliance. There's a whole lot of you and not a whole lot of us, but at the end of the day, we're shooting for that even playing field, and I think that would help. So I guess that would be my call to the industry folks that are on the phone here. That might have been Lynn Hamilton's idea. He's not here today to help flush it out, but from his standpoint, it was pricing and tear and all that stuff that they encounter in the grocery industry. You're looking for cannabis. Mark's looking at fuel quality stuff. Eric's probably looking at vapor stuff. There's all these different segments of industry that could certainly benefit from more education. And we could benefit from talking to them. I'm not going to sit back and say, well, we're the regulators and we learn a lot of stuff from industry too.
Michael, One other thought, and Leah, I don't know if it's been the same for your industry, but we have the Arizona Petroleum Marketers, and I think that's always been a good venue for Michael, folks like you or Vince or somebody from the agency. You can speak to the leaders of a given industry at a luncheon, and a lot can be accomplished.
The Arizona Dispensary Association and Ann Torres, the councilwoman that's closely associated with our regulatory body, ACDHS, invites them often to come do conferences and such and talk. I think that exactly like you said, Mark, what a great idea to invite Vince. It's just something, is it without outside of my abilities to reach out to him directly? I'm not able to do that, right?
You're able to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. The trick is you can't reach out
And add
quote unquote
everybody else.
as an AZDA WMSD advisory council member.
Right.
You can reach out as an industry representative.
Industry representative, and I'm inviting you to our ADA
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah,
lunch.
exactly. And Arizona Petroleum Marketers, they're usually pretty good about getting us on the hook to come out and talk. I know the last big thing that they had, I was unable to make it. So it was like, well, I'll have to catch the next year. But you know, certainly if you as the council folks can think of any industry groups or anything like that that you think could benefit from a talk from us, you know, or if you want to set up, you know, come up with some ideas for some workshops, whatever. I am part of my goal as director of the agency is to help increase the education about what's going on so that it's less, let's walk in your doors and shut everything down, and more, let's just trust but verify. Let's just make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Sometimes that doesn't work, right? Sometimes you got sites that just, they're going to do what they're going to do. And that's why we exist. But there are a lot of things, especially in like the retail pricing category and such, that, you know, a workshop could go miles towards getting compliance up. And at the end of the day, that compliance is so the consumers can know what they're paying for stuff, make comparative decisions when they're shopping, and be guaranteed that when they're buying a pound of something, they're getting a pound of something, or whatever fraction they're in, or a gallon, or a measure of something. So if we can keep compliance up across the board, I'm good with that.
Right.
So.
All right, good discussion. Anybody on the call has any more ideas, get in touch as needed. Let's keep moving here. Number 6 on the agenda, updates on the division and the agency. Michael?
All right, so I don't have a ton of updates for AZDA. I mean, realistically, they've been watching a few pieces of legislation that are going through, but for this group, the only one that would be of interest would have been the fuel blends stuff that was going through, and we can talk about that briefly. But otherwise, there's a new associate director of the Animal Services Division, bringing years of experience with agriculture to the forefront there. His name's Rob Smook. If you've ever done anything where you needed the PIO for agriculture, he was the guy. Otherwise, there's not a lot of news at the AZDA level. It's just we're doing what we're doing and continue to do so. At the Weights and Measure Services Division level, we are really close to hiring at least one more investigator, maybe 2. It all depends on how the HR stuff works out. Because we've had an opening in the Tucson area and an opening in Northwest Phoenix. The Tucson opening was there was a retirement that kind of played into that. And then there was also one of the investigators down there headed off to greener pastures. The Northwest Valley opening was a promotion. So the investigator that had that spot is now on the management team. So we have to backfill that investigator position. Really close to getting those hired. Hopefully we'll be able to do that within the next few weeks, get those folks rolling. The legislative update for SB 1064, there's not a whole lot I can say about it at this point. It was on the agenda. It got a due pass recommendation. It got kicked back, I believe. And at this point, I'm not sure where it's going. I don't know if it's going. Vince has been following it very closely. And I wasn't able to get an update from him this morning because the situation has been pretty, loose. But at this
Right.
point, I don't foresee anything major happening with it.
For everyone else, that's the fuel formulation.
Fuel formulations.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that should go through, I mean, it had a strike everything motion. They took out basically, they gutted it and turned it into something else. And the something else was a little bit more what we would have been looking for. Just for, okay, if you want us to regulate it, this is going to be something easier to regulate. But there was going to be Weights and Measures would have had to assemble a task force to study formulations and storage solutions and all kinds of other things. Once that task force was in place for a year, then Weights and Measures would have to run the findings of the task force. And, there was all kinds of stuff involved with it. The biggest hanging points as far as the legislature goes are still, well, if there has to be a waiver, who gets to ask for a waiver, stuff like that. So, and that portion last I heard was still being tweaked around with, but I don't have a major update for that. Like, all right, everybody, here we go, but because we're not there yet. So there's that. I mean, as far as formulations go, at this point in time, even if that Senate bill gets through, it's not going to be an overnight change to formulations. Part of that task group's job was going to be to study formulations and do modeling and figure out what other blends may be appropriate. So, there was nothing specific called out in that legislation to be, well, thou shalt allow this blend and this RVP and this. It was nothing like that. It was just somebody figure out the best. And again, Weights and Measures is fuel agnostic. Somebody tell us what flavor of fuel is required, and we will go ensure that that is the fuel that's out there. Is basically our role. So DEQ comes out and says, these are the specifications for the fuel, for air quality and such. Okay, now we go out and we regulate that. That's true. But it's not us sitting back saying, well, make it this, it's just, okay, you guys tell us what we're regulating. That's not to say we don't have a little bit of input, but we really try to be neutral. Just like, no, if you can get it to meet the specifications of DEQ, that's what you got to do. So anyway.
All right. Any other updates from the divisions?
Trying to think. I don't think so. It's since our last meeting, we haven't had a huge number of staffing changes. We have had our regular scheduling person has been out for the last couple of weeks. I'm not sure how much longer this person will be out. So the vapor scheduling and the pre-burial and complaints and all that stuff, we've been doing the best we can with. I'll say I've been the one doing the vapor scheduling, and I stumbled into something yesterday and went, oh, that's where they all are, and had to schedule like 30 of them. Okay, here we go. Because none of that stuff came with an owner's manual, unfortunately. I'm working on that too. If you know anybody in the vapor area, Eric, we apologize. It's been a learning curve for all of us. But last I checked, everybody got the vapors that they wanted, so we should be good to go there.
Yeah, no worries at all.
All right. Other than that, I don't think, if nobody has any other questions about what's going on at the agency, that's all I can think of at the moment.
Just one quick one. How many inspectors do you have total at this point?
Currently, we have, I want to say 12 inspectors. We should have 14. We should have way more than 14.
Come on, you should have 25 or 30, Michael.
Yeah. As the population of the state has gone up, our numbers have gone down. So it doesn't make much sense. That aside, I guess I'll mention the risk-based inspection plan has been implemented now for coming up on a year. The investigators seem to like it, because it gives them some very clear-cut guidance, thou shalt go forth and do this kind of inspection. Everybody's hitting their numbers pretty good. I haven't had a real opportunity. I've been kind of waiting for that 1 year mark to hit so that I can go start pulling compliance rates again and seeing, okay, what's changed. And of course, complaints and re-inspections and, fuel qualities and all that stuff, vapor inspections, they're not part of the risk-based plan.
And those take priority.
A complaint
A complaint
takes priority. Vapor has to happen. The re-inspections, if a risk-based inspection, let's say an inspector goes and visits a store as a risk-based inspection, right? They're following the risk-based plan. Risk-based plan says, hey, you go test X number of these stores. So they go in as a risk-based inspection. If it's one of those inspections that fails and gets a re-inspection, okay, the re-inspection is not a risk-based inspection anymore. It's just, okay, well, they failed, now they have to go through the cleanup process, basically. So there's the fun in that. And I just noticed that laptop is dying. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Because I don't have a power cord handy for it. Let me look at that real quick. So, but anyway, I do believe that is all I had for agency updates.
Okay. All good stuff. Let's keep moving here. Number 7, conflict of interest. I haven't filled one of those out in a while. Are you insinuating that we need to update those?
Yes, that would be my insinuation. Lena has already completed her updated conflict of interest. I do need to get some conflict of interest statements from everybody else on the advisory council. I can go back and look. I don't think anybody else had completed one. So, with that said, what I can do is get with those of you who need to still complete those and send you the paperwork that you need to complete. I think this was just a good opportunity to say that I'll be sending you that paperwork and please complete it and get it back to me. So,
All right, we'll do that.
No problem. Yeah, I can get that completed and back to you right away.
Yep, I will. Hopefully, when I get back over after this meeting and go find our cubicle, I'll have 10 minutes to send it. If not, it'll probably be tomorrow, but I'll make myself a note. All right. So
moving into number 8.
I think we're to number 8.
All right, number 8, Michael. What do we have going as far as the membership goes?
As far as membership, we've still got our 5 council members. I was kind of hoping everybody would be here today so I could poll folks on how long they've been at it since I've taken the responsibility of the council. I've got a pretty good idea that some folks have been at it for a while. That's all I really know. I figured it'd be easier to ask than try and dig through, 3 years worth of minutes and just see, oh, that's when that person came along.
Has it only been 3 years?
What's that?
Has it only been 3 years?
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah, I've been here since the get-go, and I my background originally was with weights and measures, and I'm happy to serve, but I certainly don't want to be a stumbling block, or I'm happy to continue serving as long as you need me.
Okay. And I think and I appreciate that, Mark, greatly. I think, because on the flip side, it's not like people are knocking down our door to be on the advisory council, so it's not like I need to move some folks out of the way, but it's just making sure that those that are serving are still good to serve. And just kind of the general reminder, it's a 3-year term. Sometimes they go longer. But if you've done your 3 years and you're absolutely to the point you're like, look, man, I just don't want to do this anymore. That's fine. I understand. Just let me know. We'll find somebody to get on there for you. But Mark, I understand you're willing to keep doing it, which is great.
I think I'm a year in.
Yeah, you're a year in, so you're stuck with us for a couple more years anyway.
Yeah, I think I'm about a year. I think Leah and I started around the same time, so I think I'm about a year in or so.
Yeah. So, and then Mark and Lynn have been around for a while. So,
I personally knew about the advisory council through one of those associations we were mentioning, I would imagine that every industry you regulate has some sort of an association.
Yeah,
That if you were to send a call to the public bulletin, we are looking for a representative from your industry, there might be crazy folks like myself out there that are looking for additional information on our regulatory body. This is 100% why I joined, is to gain the
Right.
info for my business. So.
right. Well, and the other thing that the advisory council's tasked with is informing us of what's going on with industry.
Mhm.
And making sure that if you have recommendations for things that we should be doing, not necessarily to remove regulation from an industry, but how we can do our regulation better,
Yeah.
then that's part of the job of being on the advisory council, is to advise us in how we're performing our duties. But certainly, being on here to learn some more stuff about what we're doing with your own industry is certainly, part of the gig as well.
Of course.
So, with that said, I think I am limited to 5 members. I would have to double check on that. But overall, just, if you're thinking, man, I think I'm done. Okay, well, if you have any recommendation of who else would take your place, we would take that as well. But like I said, I'm not going into this to be like, well, some of you guys have been around for a while. No, if you're good, you're good. I'm good. So just kind of wanted to bring that up since I hadn't had that discussion with everybody yet since I became director. So other than that, I believe that is all I have for the advisory council member updates for now. I might poll each of you individually. Again, with that open meeting law stuff, can't do a reply all. But just poll each of you individually and just, maybe what I'll do is when I send out that email with conflict of interest stuff, okay, how long you been on it? Are you still interested in doing it? Just to make sure, because I know it's a neat spot to be in to get to serve on the advisory council, and I understand that. I just want to make sure that nobody's sitting here going, I feel like I'm expected to be here. No, if you're done, you're done. I get it. So if you want to stay, I ain't gonna argue because here you are. So anyway.
All right. Good deal. Good deal. Well, I'm happy to serve. I enjoy it. Just hearing from Leah and new things is always interesting to me. So, all right. The most important point on the agenda, call to the public. I wish there were a lot of people on the line, but I don't see it. But now's your opportunity to speak. Anybody? Unfortunately, I hear nothing. So without need for a motion to adjourn, I say, well, first, I assume we'll go ahead and leave it to you, Michael, to schedule the next meeting, maybe in a quarter or however you plan on doing this. I think it's quarterly.
Yeah, I think I'm shooting for quarterly.
Okay.
If everybody feels that's appropriate. I need to go back and see. I don't know that the statute says how often we have to meet. I think it's just as determined by the assistant director.
Okay.
But if everybody's still good with quarterly, we can still shoot for quarterly. I'm good with that.
I say we leave it to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's sometimes obviously there are a lot more things going on with industry and with us, that are kind of updatey sort of things that, yeah, the meetings fast and furious probably wouldn't even be enough, but there's not a whole lot going on right now. So they don't seem like huge meetings, but we did get some good input today. So I do appreciate that.
Yep.
I'm suggesting the next meeting to be July 30th.
Okay.
10 a.m. Today would have been at 10 a.m. There was a little bit of so Cheryl at the front desk out here, if you came in today, so you met Cheryl out there. She's the one that maintains the calendar for this conference room. So I messaged her a few days, when I was finalizing this meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I said, so I need, Tuesday the 16th at 10 a.m. And she came back and she said, no, I've got someone in there until 11 a.m. I said, okay, give me 11 a.m. Well, about an hour later, she said, dude, I was looking at May.
Yeah.
You could have had it at 10, but I'd already
Too late.
typed up the agenda, sent it out, put it on the website, so that's why we met at 11 today.
It was.
It didn't work out for me because I drove down from Flagstaff, so that extra hour of breathing room was nice.
Or 11
Um,
months, so.
So, but yeah, July 30th, we'll say 10 a.m. We might do 11 a.m. When I send out that
That survey works
that
really
survey,
nice.
yeah,
It really
just-
does.
and always, don't be afraid to down at the bottom in the comments, just say, well, we can also look at this date, and this date. Might not get you anywhere, but if you put that, you put that, and you put that, the three of them line up, hey, that date could work out really good too. So, but yeah, still shooting for quarterly.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to rattle my cage a little bit and say, hey, I think we might need to have a meeting about something. Because I'll more than, if you got stuff going on that you guys think we need to meet,
Yeah,
absolutely let me know and I'll set up a meeting, as quickly as I can.
And all of us should forward any potential agenda items in advance to Michael for review.
Yes, that would be appreciated.
All right.
And there was the one that you had asked for, Mark. I can't talk about the result on that one yet. So,
Yeah, it's fine. No worries.
uh,
Okay. All right. I think that's everything. We covered everything and no need for a motion and a vote on adjourning. So let's call adjournment now at, what time is it? 12:07, under an hour.
under an hour, 51 minutes
There
for
we
those of you
go.
counting at home.
Thank
All
you
right,
guys
Leah.
very much. I appreciate it. Have a
Good
great
to
day.
see you guys.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thank you.
afternoon.
Thanks,
Take
Mark.
care. Bye-bye.
Awesome. I'm gonna go hold the beds. Appreciate you so much.